everybody, welcome back to Furniture Flipping Teacher. I'm Lauren. In this video, I am going to be making over this giant dresser. It has 9 drawers, but it's super long and super heavy and really well made. The company that made it is called White Fine Furniture. I don't think I've had a piece named brand by this brand before, but I am excited to get to working on this. I have some ideas in my head that I think is going to make this piece really come back to life and live on for decades to come in its new home. So let's get into the flip. Our first order of business is always to remove the hardware. I am not going to be keeping this hardware because it's a bit outdated. I think that if I can find some hardware that really makes it come into the modern era, that it'll be a lot easier to sell. Sometimes I feel like the hardware can make or break a piece, so this hardware has got to go. I found this piece at Goodwill for just $65, which I thought was a really great deal for this large of a piece of furniture. And I got it probably back in November, so it's been a few months, but I've been really itching to get to work on it. While I am removing the hardware, I'm just gonna go ahead and take the drawers out as I go, and I'm also gonna label them so that I know exactly where they belong, but I figure sometimes it's easiest to just take them all out so I can clean the insides as well. And sometimes I get lucky and the drawers are already labeled, which this set is, so I am going to not have to label them, and I'll just set the drawers aside. I am going to go ahead and clean now, and I'm going to start on the insides here. It's quite dirty in there, mostly dust and kind of like debris, a little bit of probably pet hair, things like that. So I want to get all of that sucked out of there before I wipe it down. This will just help in the long run make things go a bit faster. That way I'm not like wiping out big chunks. So I just have a shop vac, a regular shop vac that I like to do this with. The inside of that was probably one of the worst I've seen, especially in the middle portion. Just down below, there was a lot of gunk and dust. So really glad I got that out with the vacuum. But next I am going to clean the surface of the piece, including the drawers and all of the outside. And I am gonna be using my Lily Moon Furniture Prep Cleaner. This is my go-to. We want a degreasing cleaner to get all of the dirt and grime off, but then also any oils or grease that can be on the surface. This is going to help the primer really adhere well, because if it's like oily, there's nothing really for it to grab onto and the products don't mix well. So it's important to clean the surfaces of your pieces first thing after you remove that hardware. Next up is to fill in some hardware holes. We got everything nice and clean, and there are these hardware holes that are 4 inches apart, but my hardware that I'm going to use is about 5 inches apart. I could have gone on Amazon and grabbed a 4-inch piece, but I really like the hardware that I have, and then I don't have to spend extra money. Sometimes it's great to just use up the hardware that you already have on hand, and I have 6 or 8 pieces, so it's perfect amount for this dresser. Now these drawers have the original hardware holes, but then also they were kind of nailed in with pin nails as well to hold down the bottom pieces of the hardware. So there's 4 holes on each drawer that I need to fill in, and I'm going to be using the JB Wood Restore Putty, basically Bondo. This acts the same, but we have a 2-part cream. So we've got this in the can, and then once you mix the cream hardener in this tube with it, that's when it starts to harden up. And you got to work a little bit quick. Kind of starts to harden within about 1.5 to 2 minutes. So I only like to mix up the amount that I think that I'll need, and I can always mix up more later, but I'd rather do that than waste any. So we've got just I think that'll be plenty for these hardware holes. Just gonna squeeze on that. I'm starting with the hardware holes, and then as I look around the piece a little bit more, I may have some more areas to fill in, but as I was kind of cleaning and looking around, there really wasn't anything significant. So that is really awesome when there's, you know, barely any damage on a piece of furniture, because then that means minimal repairs, which is really nice. When it's all starting to be like a pretty consistent color, that's when you know it's all mixed up really well, and that's when you can begin applying it. I really like using Bondo on hardware holes because it doesn't shrink. So typically you're only gonna need 1 application of it. Sometimes 2 applications is necessary just to make sure that they're totally filled in and you can't see the ghosting of those hardware holes. But most of the time 1 application works. Sometimes other wood fillers and things like that shrink up even over time, and so even if you can't see them right away, say you go and put your primer and your paint on them, and then that's when the holes become visible, and it's really frustrating because then you have to do some more filling and sanding and then basically recoat your whole piece, etc., etc. And so Bondo, in my opinion, is the best, or any really type of like epoxy. If you like using quick wood or something like that, those also hold up really nicely. There we go. So all of those are filled in. That will harden, and then we'll move on to some sanding. I'm also going to fill in the door holes as well. I'm still going to be putting knobs in them, but the holes aren't right in the middle of the section, and with the new knobs that I'm putting in, they need to be right in the middle because it takes up pretty much that entire space. So we'll drill new holes later, but I need to fill those in. The Bondo is dry on the drawers, but I'm gonna move on to sanding, and I have decided, I think, that I want to keep the top wood. It has a pretty wood grain, and I do know that it is veneer, but it's a bit of a thicker veneer, so I'm hoping that with some light sanding we can get this original finish off, and then we can do a complementing stain color to the color that I end up painting the remainder. I think that kind of having a two-tone with the direction I'm going on this piece will really be awesome to have it on the top, and I'll also probably bring it in down below at the bottom as well. So I'm going to be using my Surf Prep 5-inch random orbital sander. This one is also connected to my dust extractor, and I'm going to use 120 grit. I think that that is going to be rough enough to start to get the finish off, but also not too coarse like an 80 grit to go through that veneer super quickly. I'm going to go really slow and be really careful, and hopefully this finish comes off pretty quick. So this section of sanding took me about 13 minutes, which isn't too bad. That was just with my 120 grit sandpaper. I used 2 pieces of sandpaper. I want to try and lessen the sanding time a bit. And so I am going to try my carbide scraper, which I haven't used in quite a while, but this veneer is pretty thick. So I wasn't too nervous to like bust through this, and I didn't bust through it at all, so that is really nice. And one way that you can tell if it's thick or thin or if there's veneer even at all is to come around to the back and just check. But then also for this one specifically, since there's so many different directions of wood grain, I knew that it was probably veneer because wood doesn't really grow like that. It kind of all has one direction in the grain. So with this carbide scraper, I want to make sure to go in the direction of the wood grain. So like these pieces, I would come toward me, and then the rest of it goes side to side. So I definitely need to make sure to follow that. So I'm going to just start and see where it gets us. This is basically just taking the finish layer off, and some of the color will probably come off with it, but it's going to just cut the sanding time down a bit if it works. Sometimes you can tell that stuff has come off, sometimes you can't. The main thing is like if you're getting yellow or white, I guess little dust, I don't know what scrapings, then that is generally going to be the finish that's coming off, because the finish goes on clear, and so that's what you're kind of scraping off, which is really, it's usually the tough stuff anyway, so that's kind of what you're going for to get off. You don't want to go too deep and cut the wood, so you just kind of got to have a happy medium. I think I need a new blade, which is why it's not coming off as easily as I thought it would, but maybe the edges are sharper, so sometimes it does catch a little bit of the finish. And so if I had a better blade, which I just need to order some, then the carbide scraper would work a lot better, I do believe. But for now, I'm stuck with the sander. So overall, that took a little bit longer than I was expecting it to, and after going through 3 different carbide scrapers, I found one that actually had a good blade on it, but like I said, I definitely need to be replacing these blades, and they would work a lot better. So if your carbide scraper isn't working quite right, or actually scraping off the material, then maybe you do need a new blade. Because once I found the one that had a good blade, this 3rd section over here was super quick and easy to sand after I scraped a lot of it off. So it just kind of depends on if you want to be sanding for a longer period of time or if you would rather take a little bit of time. And not gonna lie, the carbide scraper definitely takes a little bit of strength and elbow grease. But if you want to kind of cut down on your sanding time, a carbide scraper could be a great way to help you do so. And so now that I've got this top piece all sanded, it looks really good. And I will say one more thing before we move on. I did switch to an 80 grit in the middle section. I thought it would maybe help me go faster, which I think for the most part, it made me go faster a little bit, but at the end of the day, it made a lot of sanding swirls. And so then I had to go back with my 120 grit anyway and sand those out really well. So I feel like I still sanded the same amount, if not more, because I had to go back again, which you're gonna wanna go back. I'm gonna still probably come back with like a 220 grit, but I had to just really focus on getting those sanding swirls out so that it's not gonna show up later on in the stain. So something to keep in mind, and all of this is just learned by trial and error, but I'm just sharing my experiences with you so you can get maybe a little bit of a feel for it. Next though, I am going to do all of the scuff sanding on the entire piece, and then that includes sanding down the Bondo that I put on yesterday on the drawers for the hardware holes. And then I do think that in the middle drawers, I am going to sand those to raw wood as well. And when you open the doors, it'll kind of have that same feel as the top does with the stain. So let's do some scuff sanding. Now that I got all of the sanding done and I did go ahead and wipe all of the sanding dust back, I am going to be taping off a few areas. I already put some tape on the edges of the drawers and I inserted them so that I can spray everything in while or spray everything with primer while everything is together. And then I am going to tape off the top here. I like to start out by going around with the green frog tape just around the edges, and then I'll use the plastic and finish it off to cover the entire surface. So I originally was going to make a new base for this, but I'm also a little bit skeptical because it is so heavy. So I had an idea, but looking at it like it is now, I kind of am getting the urge to not make a new base, but instead kind of tweak the old base. And instead of painting it all the same color, I want to make the base down below, like that bottom skirting piece, the kickboard kind of thing, the same color as the top will be and the inside drawers. And I think that that will be just enough to give it a little bit of a new look without having to potentially risk the base that I might build breaking, because again, this piece is a beast. It's so long and it's so heavy. I was gonna put more supports than normal, but I think this is gonna be a better route. So before I get to priming, I'm going to flip this back on its back and then sand down the skirting board to the raw wood and tape it off so it'll be ready to stain when I'm ready to stain everything. It'll also save me a little bit of time, but I think that it'll still give it a good effect. Oh, we're missing a wheel. I have to find a wheel. Bottom is taped off now, so it's time for primer. I would show you my primer, but it has primer all over it, but this is the Bin Advanced Primer. Again, I did go ahead and get a gallon of it because it was gonna be cheaper that way, and I saved probably $15 or $20 doing it this way versus buying quarts. So I'm always looking to save some money, and I'm sure you are too, so always do the math to see which deal would be better so that you can save money, and that profit can then come from the pieces that you do. So I am already filled up here with my spray gun and the primer. Lately, I've just been keeping this one filled with the primer because I've been loving this primer tinted to the gray color. It's really great at blocking the stains as well as just making it so that the paint adheres really well, and I haven't had any issues with it yet, so I love it. And I'm just gonna keep it filled in here until I don't have any anymore, and maybe I'll need to clean this out. But I'd say that this is okay to keep full for a little while, not too long. And the longevity of your sprayer is gonna go farther if you do clean it out each time, but kind of keep you updated on that. I am gonna go ahead and spray this with my Wagner Flexio 5000. And get one coat going. I'll probably end up with 2 coats, but I love how it goes through my sprayer so nice and smooth, and that cannot be done. Well, it can be, but it's not suggested to do it with the shellac or oil-based bin, so that's why I really love the advanced line, because it's water-based. So you probably noticed that when I sprayed with the drawers in, like how am I going to get on the insides of the drawers on like the edges? And it's totally up to you whether or not you want to spray with them in or take them out and wrap them up and spray them that way so you can spray the edges. Sometimes I just like to spray them with them in so that I don't need to wrap the drawers and things like that. And then there is a method that you can use to still make sure that you're priming and painting the edges of the drawers, which is obviously a super important step. And so since I decided to do it this way, I'm going to show you how to get these. What I really love to use are my Zebra artist brushes. This is the large set, but they also have medium ones and they also have small ones. I love that that Zebra has recently come out with the artist brush sets because I feel like we were a little bit limited in the large brushes, like the regular styles. And when they came out with the artist brushes, I was so excited because we're gonna be able to get high quality brushes with the artist brushes as well, not only the regular paint brushes. So this specific pack comes with a cut-in brush, a square brush, and a triangle brush. And honestly, I think either one of these three could be used for this technique. I think I'm gonna use the cut-in brush. It's gonna be perfect for the edges of my drawers. And then all I do is take my spray gun and I just take the top off, set it aside, and then I have all of the primer or paint inside of my spray gun here that I can take the paint from, that I can then dip my brush in and still like not have to open the big can. So I'm just gonna set this aside, then I'll show you here. Just gonna dip it in. Don't need too much. And we'll just paint along the edges here. I still like to do a little bit of tape on the edges here just because I like to protect the dovetail and I don't want to get any sort of paint on it. But you still can go in on the side there and apply that primer, okay? So first one done, and then just move down to the next drawer. It is time to drill some hardware holes. I always forget this step until after I've painted, and I'm remembering this time, so I'm gonna do it when we have just the primer on. I'm gonna be having 4-inch hardware holes, and so, wait, I better double check that because now I'm thinking it's 5-inch. Okay, I'm gonna double check how far apart they are, but I am gonna be using a hardware jig that I got at the hardware store to mark the holes exactly where I'm going to be drilling, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. Definitely a good thing I checked because this is definitely 5-inch hardware. I already made some markings for 4-inch hardware, but I didn't drill them yet. So I'm glad I caught that. I don't know why it just popped in my head, but I was like, wait, I think the old holes were 4 inches apart, but the new ones need to be 5. So anyway, there's so many different methods to drill hardware holes. These drawers are a little trickier just because they have like all these ridges. So like this doesn't really set flush against it. So it's kind of lumpy and bumpy. And then I have this guy, which is another cabinet pull adjustment for your hardware. I think this one has 5-inch, but I'm not for sure. I'm gonna have to measure. This one does have 5-inch as well. So I'm gonna be able to use this to drill the hardware holes. All you do is put this up on your drawer, and then wherever the middle is, you kind of line it up. You still have to do some measuring. So I have my tape measure up there, and I've been measuring like the middle of the drawer and the middle of the drawer this way, and then I make a mark there. And then wherever I want my holes to be, I'll put the middle mark on there, and then we'll be able to drill the holes. I mark it, and then I'll drill them after that. It's about ready to be time to paint. And I am gonna be using two different colors, but they're really, really similar. I think 1 pint would cover this entire surface, but I'm a little unsure. So I've got the color Anchor, which is the blackest black from Dixie Belle's Silk line. That's Anchor. And then I also have this color called Black Sands, and that is also from the Silk line, and it is just a little bit more charcoaly than the black, but they're pretty similar. So this one is going to tone down the black color a tad bit, but again, not too much, because I do want this piece to be black, dark, moody. And so I'm going to first pour it into this jar here, because I want to make sure that everything is nicely incorporated with each other before I pour it in my spray gun. And the container for my spray gun, unfortunately, is not large enough to hold 2 full pints. There's that gray color. So I am going to pour them both in to this guy. And then now that that's dumped in there, I'm just going to stir it up, make sure that it's all one consistent color in the entire jar. This is the new color. Again, not too different from the other 2 colors, but just enough difference to notice. So now I'm gonna strain it into my spray gun here. All right, so now I'm ready to do coat number 1 of the paint. I'm excited to get some color on this and see how that dark and moody look is going to turn out on this really giant dresser. Coat 1 is done and just about dry, so I am going to get ready for coat number 2. And I absolutely love this color. I'm super glad that I decided to soften the stark black, but then also not go totally charcoal. I think the mix of both was a really great choice. It just softened it a bit, just a bit, and I think it was really great. And then the hardware that I'm going to be pairing it with is going to just be that much better. So this piece is coming together awesome. I'm a little nervous about like how people are going to react to the pieces, the kind of embellishments on the doors in the middle. I personally like them, and I think definitely, like I wasn't a huge fan of them wood, but with the color on them, I think it's still gonna be a good choice that I kept them. I toyed with the idea of removing them, but I think it would have caused me to put on a lot more work to myself. So I didn't really want to do that. And I, again, think that painted, especially black, they're kind of geometric. I don't know. Let me know down below if you think I should have removed these or if you like the way that they are with the black paint. Just kind of throwing out some ideas of maybe something you could do to update a dresser if you have one and you're not sure what to do with it. But I am going to get ready for coat number 2, and then we can get this baby moving on. It's time to get the stain on all of these pieces. So I wanted to just do a pop of some wood tones with this moody black color, but I also wanted to still make it nice and dark and moody. So I am going to be using the color Mudslide from Lily Moon Paint, and it is the gel stain, water-based gel stain. This, again, I think I say this quite often whenever I use it, but it's my favorite type of gel stain to use because it's water-based and it's super easy to work with. I like to apply it with just this blue type of sponge here, get it a little bit wet, as well as the surface of the place where you are applying the stain to. And then I just put some of the stain onto the sponge, like so. And then I'll be able to go ahead and apply it. And I'm going in the direction of the wood grain from side to side all the way across, so there's no start-stop marks, and so that it all just is going in one nice long direction. So I think once this dries up nice, it's going to just be this nice chocolatey brown color that's just gonna really complement the black pretty well. So the other areas that I'm gonna be applying this stain is on the inside of these doors, and then also on the top and on the base down below. So 3 more spots to stain, but I think this will be a really nice look on the inside of the dresser. When you open up the doors, you have this little pop, and it just all is kind of gonna tie together. I'm really excited about this piece, so let's stain the rest of the areas. We are getting close to the end here. I am going to spray on a top coat. I'm going with satin, and although this paint does have a top coat built into it, I am deciding to add a little layer of protection both for the stain and the paint, but then also I personally think that if it has a little bit of a sheen, then it's going to look a little bit more high end. So that's kind of the goal right now. Well, this dresser has overcome quite the transformation. Let's check out where we started before I did all of this work to it. We started off with this vintage piece and it needed a little bit of love, but it was in overall pretty good condition. I sanded everything down from the top and made it go back to raw wood, and I stained everything up there, and then I created this custom soft black color by combining the colors Anchor and Black Sands, and I absolutely love this color. I think I said that before, but it is just great. And then I also did go ahead and put a top coat on it, and I think that it elevated the look just that much more. The silk paint does have a matte top coat built into it. The satin top coat does give it a little bit of a more sophisticated look, and I think that with black, that is totally necessary, especially if you're gonna try and get higher prices on your pieces. The hardware brought everything back together, the coordination of the stained base, the inside drawers and doors, and then the top, I think, was the icing on the cake as well. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comments, and let's talk about the numbers. I originally got this dresser at Goodwill for $65, and it was massive, so they helped me load it, which I'm always super thankful for. Primer cost around $10. Remember, I have that big gallon, and so that has lasted me, I think, 3 or 4 projects already, and it's not even halfway gone, so I'm really glad with that investment. $10 in sandpaper, both for the top and everywhere else that I stained, but then also scuff sanding the different areas as well. And then $40 for paint. I did not use the entire amount of paint that I mixed up, so I'll probably be able to get another smaller project out of that paint, but that whole paint situation cost around $40. And the top coat, I used pretty much an entire pint of the top coat. Typically, top coat is going to go a little bit quicker in my experience than maybe paint or primer would, meaning that it's gonna be used up quicker. 1, because it's a lot thinner, and 2, because you're doing more coats. I did 2 coats over the entire surface and then even a 3rd on the top. So that is something to keep in mind when you are applying that top coat to your pieces as well. And then the hardware, although I already had it on hand, I spent probably around $25 for all 8 pieces. And then the stain costs around $10. I didn't use any plastic or anything like that, so I didn't have to account for those miscellaneous costs in this flip like I normally do, because I didn't use as many materials, which is great. So $180 total spent on this flip in total, which I don't think is really too bad for this size of a piece of furniture. This size I plan to list from $900 to $950 on Facebook Marketplace. It is one of the most solid, heavy pieces of furniture that I've worked on in a very long time. Although I don't think it's 100% solid wood, I do think that there's some plywood that was used and things like that. It's still super high quality. Again, it's that White Fine Furniture brand. And from everything that I can tell, the construction on this piece is impeccable. So, if I list it for $900 to $950, that is going to give me a total profit of $720 to $770 on this flip. And I think it probably took me around 8 hours in total to flip this piece. So really not too shabby of a cost per hour that I would be paying myself once this sells. And of course, I'll update you once it sells. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this flip. I had a lot of fun working on it and just brainstorming through the different trials and thoughts that I had throughout the entire flip with you guys. Also, don't forget, I mentioned it last video, but I am having a 50% off spring sale for my courses. And I have a bundle where you get both courses, both my beginner and my sprayers for beginners courses, all in one bundle for a low price. So check out that link down below in the description. I'd love love to see you over there in my course so that we can learn something new, so we can start earning money this spring. The weather is getting better. It's the perfect time to start, so that way you are all geared up and you have all the materials that you need as spring comes along, and you can start flipping furniture outside. Thanks so much for watching. As always, let me know if you have any questions or comments down below, and I'd love to interact with you down there. And hit that subscribe button so that you can see every single video that I upload on each and every Thursday. I've got a lot coming up that you are not going to want to miss, so hit that subscribe button and I'll see you on the flip side. Well guys, we sold this piece in just 5 days of it being listed on Facebook Marketplace. I had a bit more interest than I even thought that I would. I thought it would go pretty quick just because it's one of those pieces that's desirable. It's super long. This is probably the longest piece I've ever had at 80 inches wide. And so I had a person come and they thought it was just a little bit too short for them, or else they would have bought it on the spot. But then just yesterday, 5 days after having it listed, I had another lady come in and she just absolutely loved it, went home, measured for it, and then messaged me right back and said, yep, it's mine, I'm taking it. And she sent me a Venmo deposit. Like I said, it's a super large piece, so she is going to be setting up a pickup service, I think, so that she can get it moved over to her new apartment. She's actually brand new in the area, so I love helping out people with new furniture that are moving to the area. And then also it's leading to a custom piece that she wants me to do for a coffee table that she already has. And this is gonna end up being her like entertainment center under her TV. So they're gonna be in the same room. So you can look out for that flip coming up pretty soon in the next several weeks. I'll get started on that table for her as well. So the total profit on this flip is $745. I did go down from $950 to $925. I didn't want to go down too much because, like I said, I had quite a bit of interest in this piece, but I was willing to do a little bit of wiggle room. I usually list high so that I can go down a little bit. Even if it's not too much, at least we can help them out as much as possible. So great flip, love this piece, sad to see it go, but also glad to see it go so fast. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week, and I'll see you on the flip side.